I'm David Roskoppf. I am an engineer in a physical facilities portfolio. Back in February, I did a small proof of concept on .NET Core RC1, and what we were trying to do is we thought we might do a rewrite, and so we took a week off, and we just like, well, what's going to be the best tooling in order to do our rewrite going forward? And so I actually, with a small team, we actually went through and we did a .NET Core web API kind of project and just kind of walked through, okay, well, how do we set up a project? How do we deploy it? What are some fundamental key differences? What are some advantages to it? And just really understanding the differences between going with a .NET Core app versus not going with the .NET Core app. And then in March, also went through Visual Studio training as well, Visual Studio Live training conference. And so I learned a lot about .NET Core, and I've really grown to like the direction that Microsoft is going. Yeah, I'll leave that. So, a few things, a brief overview. So kind of with the history of .NET verticals. So previously in the .NET world, what would happen is every time they went to go try to support something new, they would create a whole new stack. So you have a Windows stack, you have a Windows Store stack, you have a phone stack, you've got a .NET 4, .NET 5, and just internally in Microsoft, each of these had individual runtimes, individual frameworks, and they really weren't cohesive. And so when they did, when they started working on ASP.NET 5, they realized the need for cohesiveness because they wanted to be able to support multiple platforms without having to without having to have different teams create different toolings and have everything separate out. And they want to make it easier for us as developers so that we could just go to one place, one framework that would allow us to create an app for as many platforms as they can support. Currently in RC2, this is the current platforms that they support. You can see a lot of, there's Linux, there's Apple, a couple Windows things there. The important thing here is just the idea that, we're in the space now where we are not only creating apps for Windows machines, but we're also working to create apps that can run on other servers. Performance-wise, so just a kind of brief, so that Microsoft has really been focused on performance. There's a site that techempower.com that they kind of use as a benchmark to figure out how fast they are, and they've actually spent a lot of money to create labs to be able to measure as accurately as they can to that website. So Node.js in its current, in just one of their benchmark tests, they did 147 requests per second. And when .NET Core RC1 came out, it came out with 1.5 million requests per second. And so they've really been significantly trying to compete with the top frameworks in terms of speed. They want Kestrel, which is the web portion of the app, to be able to be fast. They want it to be, they want it to be able to really be in the top 5 or 6 in terms of web framework performance benchmarks, which is nice. The other thing that .NET Core allows us to do, obviously, because they're trying to go cross-platform, .NET Core has been focusing on making things more modular. So for instance, if I'm creating an app, just my very basic app, I'm going to get nothing. I'm going to get just the CLR. I don't have to worry about a huge library that has to be on the machine or anything. I can actually make self-contained executables, or not executables, I can make self-contained apps that I can deliver to any platform and have it run. And so there's a lot of advantages there with the .NET. Perhaps. Sorry, I'm really nervous. I don't know why. I gotta calm down. Here's some sites you can look at to learn more. With RT2 came out just literally days ago, and so I've been kind of rushing to re-up on it. The documentation isn't quite there for RT2, so if you go to like .NET right now and you go to documentation, you're going to get the RT1 documentation. With RT1, even though it's a release candidate, it was very, they knew like, I don't know, they knew fairly soon after that they released it that they were going to rip it completely apart and rebuild it again. And so ours did like rip out a lot of the underlying structures and things, and then and then when they came out with RT2, they kind of assured us that this is going to pretty much be what the RTM is going to be in June. There shouldn't be very many API changes at all. There were a significant amount of API changes between RC1 and RC2, but with RC2, we're really starting to harden. Again, the RTC or the kind of their go live is to be, I think it's mid-June, if I remember correctly, so not too far away, to really be able to take these things into production. So, let's go through a little bit of a demo here. So, I'm going to, so to start, so for those of you who wanted to get started on your own, if you go to .NET, this is kind of the landing page for .NET Core. If you go here to download .NET Core, you're going to see that you have multiple options here on the top. You can download it for Unix OS or Docker. And pretty simple instructions. Something that you're going to notice that you may or may not like as I talk to other people. Some people, the .NET Core is very command line oriented right now. They don't really have a ton of tooling around it. So once you install it, so let's say that I wanted to create a demo for us, right? So let's do simple demo. To get started with .NET Core, there's a command line called .NET, just command keyword. And all you do is you say, I want new, and it's going to create a new project. After you knew it, it's almost kind of like NPM. So you get a project, and it has references to where to get stuff, but you don't actually have the stuff yet. And so after .NET new, you actually have to do a restore. And that's going to go out and grab all the different packages that are related to this new project. So now if we go and look at this. Oh, question? So this is the second one? It's RC2, yes. Question was, is this the second one? And yes, my demo is all on RC2. And so here, you'll see simple demo. And you'll see that it creates three files here. The project.json file is really, so project.json is really what controls all the structure of everything. So if I open this up in Visual Studio Code, let's take a look at this stuff. Simple demo. I want to open folder. Simple demo. There we go. So this project.json is really information relating to the project. It tells us what its dependencies are, tells us what frameworks it's going to be using. This is kind of a very simple version of it, just kind of dumbed down. And this really is what tells it, if I wanted to go, let's say I wanted to add Kestrel, and I really just add Kestrel, which is the web hosting part of it, and I can just add it as a reference and a dependency, and I'll go get that. If I wanted to add drawing, I go get the drawing. So whatever portions outside of just the core CLR that you actually want to get, you just go get them, and you add them by this dependency.
Dave,
Yeah.
can you hit Control plus a couple of times to zoom in?
Oh, absolutely.
That's good.
And then it has just a simple program, right? Just a simple, public static void main, console write line. And so here, if I just go .NET run, it'll go ahead and compile, and it will run this, and you'll get a hello world. If I go ahead and if I wanted to just run the binary and not have to recompile and everything, I could just do cd bin, cd debug, cd netcore app 1.0, and I could just do .NET simple demo.dll and run one of the DLL library directly. And this is very simplistic here. This is just one example. So the example here is notice a couple things. For one, I'm not using Visual Studio. I'm using Visual Studio Code, but really I could do the same thing with text files, and I can create an app with any editor that I really wanted to. This is kind of key. You no longer need to be held down by Visual Studio for your tooling. This also makes it so that you can develop on any platform. So not only can I create apps for any platform, but I can literally have an Apple and I can develop using just whatever tooling I want in .NET Core. .NET Core really is focused on focused on supporting a lot of the open source frameworks that are already out there in technologies, and really supporting that community as much as it can, including being able to support the developers who develop on different platforms. Let's go through another example. So this time I will actually use Visual Studio because Visual Studio has good templating. So if I open up Visual Studio and I wanted to create a web project, you can still do it. And I'll show you how here as soon as it boots up. Any questions so far? No? Okay. So if I wanted to create a new .NET Core project, you're going to need the latest update for Visual Studio, which just came out this last week. But if you update everything, you can do new projects. And you'll notice in your new project, you'll have a template called ASP.Core Web Application. And so here, I can say, let's here, web demo. And it's going to give you three options. It's very similar to the ASP.NET 4.6. You got an empty web API, web application. Web application out of the gate is going to give you, it's going to assume that you want to use MVC. Web API is going to be very similar to Web API 2. There are some changes, and we'll probably take care of that in different. There are some changes in terms of how the pipeline goes for controllers. But we're not going to cover that in this. And for me, I'm going to create just a simple SPA demo, an Angular project real quick, and so I'm just going to do empty. So when I do empty, you're going to see that the project layout is a little bit different and unfamiliar. So right off the bat, you're going to notice again, there's your project JSON. As you can see, this one automatically added Kestrel for us to our dependencies, and so automatically got those libraries. The other thing that you're going to notice is you have some build options and runtime options for garbage collection. The other thing you're really going to notice is this www root folder. The www root folder, this project, the .NET Core supports front-end development almost very similar to Node.js. For me, it's almost eerily similar. But your www root folder is to contain all your static files. So if I wanted to put in a static just index.html file, I can just put in www root. I go to call it, and it'll look for the www root to see that. So let's go and try. To do that, out of the gate, it doesn't quite do that. The other thing you'll notice too is the startup.cs file. The startup.cs file is just kind of telling it how's it going to respond, and so you can see there's this hello world right here. It's actually sending a response to the controller. So if I hit start and run this, you'll see the first example. It says hello world. Now in this, you also see a let's go back to startup. So startup configure allows us to do a few things. Allows us to configure a lot of, basically allows us to configure, do a lot of the Kestrel configurations here. It also allows us to do, how are we going to handle, how is our app going to run? A lot of that definition comes here. So to demonstrate, if I go to my project JSON, I'm going to go ahead and say I want to use static files. In order to do that, I go to Microsoft. One of the things that I do like, although it's a little bit annoying as well.
Spell it wrong. You gotta spell Microsoft with
Oh. Yeah, they are. You'll notice that when I am adding my dependencies, that there is a type ahead. The type ahead, however, doesn't appear to be, I'm not sure why, but it doesn't appear to have all the libraries. For instance, there's a static file library, which is fairly common. However, the type ahead didn't really pick it up. So it does pick up some things. So you can see, as you can see, there was like signal R stuff there. Obviously some different language support. And you can kind of, you can also do things like you can add entity framework. So it's kind of cool. I like it. You'll see that same I don't want that. You'll see that same type ahead when you also go to modify your no, I don't have that.
static files or?
Yeah, sorry. You got to modify your npm file as well. It'll also have that. It'll also typically type ahead on your. Did I type it wrong? Oh, it's ASP.NET Core. Static files 1.0. That's 0. Get ahead of that typo. Oh. There we go. It's resolved now. As soon as I add it, you notice that Visual Studio automatically, as soon as I save the file, it automatically say, oh, well, there's more dependencies. I'm going to go ahead and get them. And it'll go ahead and add them to your references. So you can see here, static files is automatically added to my references. So some things to take away from this, you don't really have the same NuGet, visual experience that you typically have. Everything that when you go to install new libraries, you just do it through the JSON. Another thing, if I wanted to add npm or any other configuration for another, so I go to add new item. You're going to see a bunch of different configuration files. And out of the gate, if you add any of these configuration files, Visual Studio tooling is very good at helping you to really set those up. So if I just wanted to do an npm configuration, and let's say that I wanted to add just Angular 1. Save. And you'll notice in my dependencies now, I'll have npm JSON files. Let's do that again. There it goes. And I'm happy brought Angular in for me. If I wanted to go ahead and add grunt or gulp, I just do add new item, gulp. And it brings in just a simple gulp file where I can start doing things like where I can start running any of the gulp cat tasks, like your uglifying, your concatenating, all that can be done here. Something to know, so Microsoft, in terms of its, so in .NET 4.6 or 4.5, when you went to go, one of the things I didn't like in the experience is I didn't like the administrative front-end experience. Oftentimes when we try to implement Angular, we ended up, I've seen a few frameworks. Oftentimes, if you try to, integrate Angular into the front end, usually you get some frameworks where you have like CSHTML files that are generating your static files, and you do that because you want to be able to leverage the Microsoft bundling then. And you want to leverage Microsoft's native uglifying. And .NET Core, they just kind of said, we don't really need that. The open source communities are already doing it for us, and just leverage what they're already doing. And so, hence, hence the support for Gulp, hence the support for grunts, so forth. So now, we added the static files. I got to go ahead and add it here as well. So I don't want it to say hello world anymore. What I wanted to do is I wanted to use the static files. And so I can just come in here and say use static files. Like that. I'm going to say app.use default files. And now, if I go to add a file to any files to here, I can just add a simple index.html page. The other thing you'll notice too, let's see if it works. Is around running things. There's a little .NET Engineering Forum. Around running things, you actually have a few options. You notice here I have IS Express, which was kind of turned on just by default. But you also notice this web demo. When I hit the web demo, what it's actually going to do is it's going to run Kestrel. So it's going to be like as if I use .NET command line to run this. So if I run this here, you're going to see that it's running on port 5000. And you'll also see, so let's try this using command line tooling. If I wanted to simply just thank you. So I could just do .NET run here. It's going to compile. One more. One more. And as you can see, just using Kestrel command line, I can just go to localhost 5000 and automatically, now it's running on a locally self-contained reference of Kestrel.
Does it have browser sync?
The browser sync.
Yes, you edit an index file and automatically syncs up. Looks like it does, listening on.
Yeah, so if I change it, so add new files or whatnot, is that what you're saying? I can just refresh the browser and have it display?
It would automatically refresh.
Oh, it will automatically refresh the browser?
I just wondered.
They're trying to move down that way. In fact, one of the things that they were really trying to do with this is that you can even change the CS file and save it and have it automatically just compile that one CS file and keep it running. And so they're really working on this experience of, as a developer, I don't have to continually reboot I don't have to recycle my application every time I make a change. I can just make changes and see the changes happen. The tooling isn't quite there yet. At least I haven't been able to experience it myself yet. There's been a few times where I'm like, okay, this will work, but I haven't really gotten it to work yet. But they say, at least in all the conferences, that's where they're going. And they've actually displayed it a few times. But they are looking to do that, to be able to have that experience. I think it might work in Internet Explorer, if you use Internet Explorer as a browser. So anyways, I'm going to shut that down. So kind of cool, right? So let's talk about, let me also show you one more thing too that's kind of cool. I mean, this is already there in the current tooling, but it's something that was added in 2015. It's called a task runner. And so if I wanted to go ahead and, I'll just create a simple task here. So let's say that I want to go ahead and add Angular to my app, right? So I have Angular here in my dependencies, but I want to actually bring it into my static content folder because I'm going to be, calling it in my index.html. So to do that, I'm basically just going to create a gulp task. I'll just already gulp task and rename this to copy library. Okay, and then there, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to define my source. Where are my files at? And so my source is going to be node modules. Angular.
It's node, not nod, right?
It is node, not nod. Thank you. And I'm going to say I just want the minified files. So I don't really care about all the files I do, I just want the minified. And then I can just say pipe. And then I can just say that I'm going to put it in my www root folder under something called library. So if I save this, and if I go to my gulp file, I can just say I want to see the task runner explorer. Now, some things you'll notice is that, and this is kind of annoying, I think, but right off the bat, you can see it kind of cached the old gulp file. I renamed my task, but you see it still says default. In order to see the updates, you have to hit refresh. And then you'll see, oh, there's my copy library function. I can right-click on that and say run, and it'll go ahead and run that function. And you'll notice that it took the dependency and copied it to my static folders. So some cool things here is that, the idea is that you kind of build your front end, and you wouldn't necessarily build your front end in the www root folder. You would probably build it on the outside. But you would use these task runners to really compile your front end, move all the files over into your www root folder the way that you want it to be displayed. So things like your replication, your concatenation, would all happen there. So now that I've done that, I can just simply do a simple Angular app here, right? So I can just say, first I just got to add it. And then say, that's controller. Oh, lowercase, that's right. Thank you. And I'm doing this and realizing it's probably pretty boring for you guys. But then I can't stop because I just started. Let's see if that works now. So, got my lost sound. Hello? So no sound for people online. That's weird. Let's see if that works. Hey, there it goes. Hey, you guys are awesome. You're working for us. I love that. You are better than Donut.js. So obviously, you just gotta imagine the possibilities here. I really think that this is the way to go for future frameworks. I think I love the fact that I can create a web app and I don't have to host it on IIS. I can host it on something lighter like Red Hat or or whatever the common Linux hosting services now. I like the fact that it's supporting the front end users. The previous Visual Studio versions and previous .NETs, they just didn't seem like they were there for the front end community. And that's why the front end community largely went over with Node.js. But now that they've kind of added the tooling here, and now that they've added a better experience, I really think that .NET Core is going to definitely be a good competitor for Node.js. It's going to be faster, it's going to be easier to use, and so I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I missed in my presentation real quick. I think I'm just going to stop there. I think I'm safe. Any questions?
Talk about the deployment as far as what you guys went through with that.
Sure. I guess there's so in our proof of concept, some things that we learned is that first off, so you can deploy and just run it by itself. So you can take the really anything that's in that folder. So I can just take these files here and bring it onto any system that has .NET, actually the actual .NET command line tooling on it. You don't necessarily need the libraries, but you do need to have the command line tooling installed. And you can bring that and just run it as is. And so you can just start up Crystal, and Crystal by itself will run, so you won't even actually need IIS at all. You can run it outside of IIS. There are some arguments. So some people say, well, Kestrel is not necessarily at that point production ready for perhaps a security standpoint to kind of handle all the attacks that you might get, or IIS is a little bit more refined. And so if you were going to deploy it to IIS, you can. The main difference is that in IIS has, when you go to your app pool, you have a few features. And one of your features that you have is you can have it run as not managed. And so you just set it as not managed, and it'll manage itself. It'll run it like its own app, really. So, but you do have to have you do have to install the .NET client tools on there in order for that to work. Any other questions? So that's, again, it's cool. All the newer functionality, things like the newest versions of Razor, the newest versions of Entity Framework are all coming out on .NET Core first, and then they'll try to backfill the classic ASP.NET 4.6. But really, if you want to stay on the leading edge of technologies when they come out, then you'll want to do .NET Core. Another thing to note is that some advantages and disadvantages, I guess. .NET Core isn't quite fully functional, meaning that .NET 4.6 has a lot of functionality that it supports, where .NET Core is really just looking at this point, they're growing, but they've really just kind of streamlined it to a few things. A good example is SignalR. SignalR is completely supported in .NET 4.6, but if you move to .NET Core, the support's not there yet. They hope to get it by the end of this year, but it's still not there. Yeah?
The areas where you're going to find that .NET Core is lacking is SignalR is the if you're running a Mac, you have Windows there for you, SignalR, you have them on the website there. So they'll either have to rewrite it, as more agnostic, so that they can take advantage of the Mac and Linux alternatives. You find the same thing like image processing, basically anything that's using 32. Has to be removed.
So the comment was made that, for those of you online, that the reason why .NET Core is lacking those is because they're lacking in the Windows kind of based components. And since SignalR is kind of a Windows-based component, in order to have it support on other platforms, you have to rewrite it. And yeah, that sounds right. So I agree. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for coming. I'm sorry I was so nervous. Maybe I can work on that. So.
Thank you.